Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I've been meaning to film this video for like 4 months now, and that is my home birth story. Some of my kids are sleeping, some of them are outside playing, so the house is quiet for at least a little bit. So I'm hoping I can just do this video really quickly and do my home birth story. So I think I have almost all my home birth stories here on YouTube, except I think for the very last one, I believe I might have just had, this might be my third one, or it might be my fourth one, so I'm not too sure, but I will link those down below. So this was my 5th home birth, not all with the same midwife that I started with, but I'm very happy with who I had and all the experiences that I had with all my other midwives as well. So I am prone to have progeroid labor. I think the past 4 pregnancies, I've had progeroid labor of some sort. Some of them were very short. Some of them lasted for like a week and over. And it's just the way my births are. This one, I have all the notes actually on my phone, just because for the longest time, for the first 4 births, my births were super easy, smooth going, and I was very much happy talking about them. This one, I would say, definitely didn't go according to what I wanted, but I feel like God's hand was on it throughout the whole entire time, and He used so much of what was going on to really make me appreciate life and appreciate the life that I was giving birth to. Not that I'm not appreciative every time I give birth, but it really put a lot of perspective into all of this. So, all right, so we're gonna just start off. So my labor, before I started laboring, I had Braxton Hicks, and I was kind of contracting, I would say a week to maybe prior to even actually going into progeroid labor. I've had some complications that started with, I believe it was the last pregnancy, and it kind of moved into this pregnancy. So I'm not going to get too much into it because it's just a long story. Basically just sharp pain in the abdomen throughout the whole pregnancy. With my previous pregnancy, it was throughout the whole pregnancy. It started very early on. With this one, it started in the 2nd trimester, like towards the end of the 2nd trimester, and it was just hardcore till the end. There's many times that I was just laying in bed. Most of my last 2 pregnancies were sort of like bed rest, but I have a lot of other children, so bed rest is not really a thing in my life. Okay, so I say here, I have notes. January 10th, on a Wednesday, I texted my friend that the past 2 days, so Monday and Tuesday, I was having pretty strong contractions, but they stopped on Wednesday. I had contractions all through the night on Wednesday, and contractions started from around 12 until 3. Then I fell asleep until 5. And then from 5 throughout the whole day, I was having contractions. So I remembered this day because I was going about my usual day. I went to bed, but then I actually got up because I was so uncomfortable with the contractions. I decided to go into the bathtub. I had my husband fill up the bathtub for me. So I actually woke him up because I was really just uncomfortable with these contractions. They were really, really strong. So I got in the bathtub. I stayed in there. I think it was 40 minutes. It wasn't super hot water, so it was just like warmish, so I wasn't worried about sitting in there for a long time. And then I kind of went to bed. I was around the bed, and then I was on the ball, just trying to kind of work through these contractions. So something that was so different from this is right away. Those contractions seemed like they were super strong, super real. They were very consistent. Whereas with some of my prodromal labor, it was inconsistent. Some of them were strong, some of them were like cramping. But when on Wednesday and Monday and Tuesday, they were really intense contractions. So then, let's say Thursday, 7 a.m., I called my midwife out. The contractions were 8 minutes apart. And I usually, in the beginning of my labor, with the past couple of labors, I had like this shaking start when like the adrenaline starts kicking in of me going into labor. That's usually when I start shaking. And so I thought it was the real deal because they were pretty close apart. And the reason I called her out too is the weather was super bad around this time. It was icy, it was snowing, and we live up in like a little bit in the hills, so it's really hard to get to us if it's icy. So I decided to call her out, and she was here within like 25 minutes basically. So I had shaking. My water, I said here, water broke around 3 p.m., but it wasn't really, I would say it was more like leaked. It had like a pretty big gush, but I wouldn't say like the very first time my water broke with my firstborn, it was a huge gush. It was like when you drop a water balloon down and like you can hear it. That's basically what it was with my firstborn. But this one, I would say a lot came out, but not all of it. So at that point, my midwife actually left because there was no significant progression happening. So she was here till 3 p.m. and she's like, call me if anything changes. So she basically was like 5 minutes away, not even. I think it was like 2 minutes. She literally just packed away and left. And I was like, hey, my water started leaking and breaking. So we thought it would move on pretty fast from there because usually when my water breaks, things get going. But little did I know, I was not having a baby that day. I started contracting throughout the whole day. Finally got some sleep on Thursday night. I was getting pretty tiresome here because, mind you, this has been going on since Monday. I've had breaks throughout the night, but since Wednesday, it was throughout the night. I got a few hours of sleep and then the whole entire day on Thursday. So I asked all my friends to pray for me. I was like, y'all, I just need to sleep. If this baby ain't coming, I need some sleep. So praise God, I got some sleep that night. And then same thing Friday. I was having contractions really, really strong all day long. And I wrote in here really, really strong. Today was the strongest day out of all the days, but at night they stopped and I was able to get some rest. So this was the reason I have this written out so much in detail, because I actually had to go through all my text messages, all my notes I sent to my friends and to my mom and to the midwife, because afterwards I blocked it out so long, because this was very tough on my body and on me mentally and on my family. So I had my mother here, my husband, my mother-in-law was sick, worried about me all the time. It drained me so much being in that prodromal labor all week long, and then the past like 2.5 days where it was extremely intense, yet I wasn't even progressing half a centimeter. Like, that was so discouraging mentally. Physically, it was so draining. And my kids were not getting any of my attention because I was basically just trying to power through the contractions. We went on walks. I went curb walking. I went up and down the stairs. I was like dancing, doing that baby mama dance. Nothing was helping that day. I was really, really discouraged. Okay, I got interrupted. But Saturday morning, basically what happened is I went to sleep. I got some sleep, thankfully, but my sleep was just really not there, basically, because I was so discouraged at that point. And I texted my midwife in the morning and I was like, hey, I'm feeling so discouraged right now. Like, what can I do to get labor started? Because I really don't want to do this for, you know, forever, for like 2 weeks. And she has already come out one time this week. So I was like, on Saturday, I was like, let's just get started. So she said I can come to her and do acupuncture, but I was like, let's try other stuff before I do that. So I started pumping, and just after a little bit of pumping, they came on really fast and really strong. So let's see. And this was since Thursday. My water has been continually leaking. So we were getting a little bit anxious at this point because I was constantly having a wet pad, and it was a pretty good significant amount in the beginning, like the first day, it was first 24 hours, it was pretty significant. My pad was constantly wet. Towards Saturday it was a little less, but it was still concerning that if my water has ruptured somewhere, my sac, if it ruptured somewhere and the water kept on, you know, the leaking out and stuff. But let's see. And then, so it didn't break, it was just like a pretty strong leak throughout this whole time. Saturday, the midwife came over again around 10:30 a.m. so in the morning. So I started doing those pumping, I think, sessions around like 8ish, and they kicked on pretty fast. And like I said, the reason she came this early on is because the roads were really, really bad, and they were predicted to be even worse towards like 5 p.m. So she's like, well, I'll just get here sooner and see how it goes. Or the roads, I think, were supposed to get bad at like 1, I think, not 5. Anyways, so she came and she checked me if I dilated. And I believe at this point I dilated like half a centimeter. Like, this was so discouraging. If you're in preterm labor and you've been laboring and it's been strong and intense contractions, and then she checks you and you're like half a centimeter. So another thing to note is with this midwife, she was super offhand, which I loved, and she would not do unnecessary checks if I didn't need them, or if I requested not to do checks, you know, cervical checks, I mean. So, but this time I actually did ask her. I was like, you know, I need to know, because first of all, I have fluid just, you know, constantly passing, and I want to see like what's going on. So she checked me and I was dilated half a centimeter, and that was like a day or two difference. So the last time she checked me, I've dilated half a centimeter in like a whole like hour, a day and a half. So basically that was very discouraging. And I was about 3 centimeters dilated. So and then Saturday evening rolls around, and she just, you know, she's been here all day, and she decided that she's just gonna go home because really there's just no point. The baby's not coming. I got in the tub at one time. It was really, really intense and it felt painful, and I even thought I was gonna be, that I'm like ready to push. This was prior to her checking me. And I was like, I just don't understand. I'm like, what is going on with my body? I was so frustrated. Like, it felt like I had this urge to push, yet it wasn't pushing and it wasn't coming. And the contractions were so strong and my back was hurting, yet there's nothing happening. So she left really late at night. I think she was here till 10 p.m. So from 10:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then she ended up going home. And I was just like, after that, I remember I was like, didn't want to talk to anybody. My whole mood just completely shifted. Like, I just shut down. Like, that's it. Like, no one, I was not talking to anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. I just like went to my bed and went to bed. I remember I cried a couple times. And then the next morning, I woke up and my kids were supposed to go to a birthday party at noon. So my husband was busy getting them all dressed, and then I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go with you guys and just kind of distract my mind. Nothing was happening, nothing. I pumped, I was like doing all the things that they tell you to do to go into labor, and nothing was working. So even I did like 3 pumping sessions that morning, none of it helped. So it was really bad weather outside. It was super icy. One of our cars is a 4-wheel drive, so it was able to go on the ice, kind of snowy road. And I remember we dropped off the kids, and my friends were like, come inside, talk a little bit. I'm like, nope. Like this whole day on Sunday, I was completely shut off from everybody. I didn't want to speak to anybody. It was just really down, in the dumps, you could say. And then we're like, well, let's just go. My mom was watching the other kids, and she's like, you know, just go distract yourself, go get some lunch. And we just did just that. So we went to get some food, and my husband went to the store to grab some stuff. And then this road throughout while we were driving was super, super bumpy, and you had to like move the, you know, drive very carefully and swerve a lot so you're not like on ice and everything. And while we were waiting for our food, I started to feel like crampiness. In the beginning, it felt like just like light crampiness, but it was getting a lot more uncomfortable every few minutes, I would say, like 3 to 5 minutes, and it was cramping, and it was getting more intense. Now at this point, I was like in the car for an hour and a half already, because like I said, anywhere you go, instead of like a 5-minute drive, it like takes you 30 minutes because the roads were really bad at this point. So I was like, hey Dre, like I think we need to go home. I'm just feeling super crampy. I feel like this ride has been too bumpy for me, and I just don't feel good. So by the time we got home, the cramping got so intense, and then it moved from like cramping to like sharp pain. So I walked inside. I was like just really out of it, because it started being actually painful instead of cramping. So I remember laying down on the couch. My mother got a heating pad for me, and I applied it on my stomach because it was hurting. And then I was just like, I was not feeling good. I was like starting to get really like achy and uncomfortable with them. Now these were not contractions, so nothing in my body was tightening. It was just shooting like sharp pain for a solid like 40 to 50 seconds every like 3 to 5 minutes, and it was getting more frequent. So then it started being from like 2 to 4 minutes, and then the pain was intensifying a lot. At this point, I notified my midwife, and I was like, man, I'm just not doing good, and my anxiety started rising, and I started getting really nervous. So I took some stuff for the anxiousness, and then I took some pain relief, thinking it's just like, you know, from the car ride, from the bumps, that my stomach is just, it was too bumpy, and I was just like, maybe it's that. So I went upstairs, and at this point, by the time I got upstairs, it got really painful. It's hard to talk about it because I tried to shut it out so much, and I'm like trying not to get emotional about it, but okay, so we took a little break because I had to pull myself together, and then I had to feed my baby, my sweet baby. I had to feed you. Yeah. So we're gonna have a little bit of a company here. So what I was saying is, at this point, as the cramping was getting pretty sharp, and it wasn't contractions. I mean, I've had contractions. I know what contractions feel like. The best way for me to describe it, and I hate to use this terminology, but it felt as I was literally being sliced with, or poked, I guess, with a knife. That's how painful and intense this got. At this time, my husband left the house actually to go pick up our kids from the birthday party, and my mom was with me. And within him, I think driving out, I think he was like 5 minutes away from their house. I called him and I said, like, I'm not doing well. I need you to come home. I need you to get the kids really fast and come home. And we're gonna go to my midwife. And at this point, my mom saw that I was just, something was off. I got upstairs and I was on my daughter's bed, because her bed is the lowest to the ground. So the position was very soothing to me. There was nothing soothing about the pain that I was experiencing. I called my midwife. I said, hey, I'm not doing well. Do you think I can, what do I do? She's like, well, how about you come up and see me and come to my clinic? So I was getting ready to go to her. And then within just a minute, the pain got so bad that I don't know how to explain this, but I think it's just a motherly thing or just a human thing. Something in my gut told me that something was wrong, and the pain was so bad that I was crying through it, and I just couldn't bear it. Like, it was so incredibly painful. And I called my midwife. I was like, I think I'm gonna go to the hospital. And I'm like, can you call in ahead so that I don't have to wait in the ER? She's like, okay. So she called in, and because of the snowstorm, the ice storm, this was the worst ice storm we've had here in our state in like 30 years. So that should tell you a lot. All the local hospitals actually closed their labor and delivery areas. They transferred all the mothers to a different hospital that was kind of further away from us, because they all lost power, and I don't know what was going on. But she called all the nearest hospitals by us, and they weren't working. And then the hospital that everyone got transferred to was extremely packed, and there was no space. And as she was calling me, I was just screaming at this point in pain. My mom went and grabbed whatever bag she could find and started packing hospital bags. She packed all my clothes. She packed the baby's clothes, essentials, things that I could need at a hospital. Meanwhile, my husband drove home as fast as he could. And there was the very last sharp pain I had. I was sitting on the bed, and it literally threw me on the ground. It was that immensely painful. And prior to this, we were praying, and I was asking God to help, and I was just praying, and my mom prayed over me, and we asked for blessing in the hospital and everything like that, because I'm usually pretty nervous with hospitals and stuff. But she left the room, and then that sharp pain came back, and it was the most horrific pain I've ever felt in my life. And I fell on the ground, and like, I knew something was wrong with the baby. So I just started praying and asking God for mercy and for him to save the baby no matter what, and to save me, like, for nothing bad to happen. And it was just such a scary moment. And then I was just like, God, you need to turn this around. At this point, I needed my husband to carry me out into the car if we're going to a hospital, because I couldn't move. Right after that prayer, after just me yelling out to God and begging him for mercy, the sharp pain stopped. Like, it just miraculously stopped, and it moved on to contractions. Okay, so like I said, the pain stopped, and it started contractions right away. And these contractions were intense, but they were not the pain that I was just experiencing. I called my midwife. Then it's so funny, if you look at my log, it's 1 minute I'm calling her saying this was moving all very fast. The sharp pain got so intense, it got minutes away. Like every minute I was having this horrific pain. And I was calling her, I'm like, hey, I'm coming to you. And then, hey, I'm not coming to you. I'm going to go to the hospital. And then I was calling her the third time. I was like, I can't make it on the stairs. Like, I physically can't make it to the car. And then I called her again. I was like, contractions started. So I told her, she's like, I'm just on my way. So she flew here basically. So she comes and these contractions are strong and I definitely can feel myself progressing. I was in my element. I was in my zone. And then my husband filled up the birth pool. She's like, are you sure you want to get in so they don't get stalled? And I was like, no, I want to get in. So I got in, and then with the total time of her coming over and me giving birth, I think it was like an hour and a half maybe. And then when I was feeling that the urge to really push, I started going for it. I remember I just told her, I'm like, baby's coming. And after I told her that, the head was out. And then I remember in the background just saying like, she was saying like, hey, take it easy with this one. I was like, no. And I basically pushed out the baby really, really fast. And while I was in the birth tub, I didn't know this, but it's really fun. You can actually see on the video because I had the labor kind of recording for my own sake. And you can see my husband. He was so in tune with what my body was doing, and he was like pointing out every time I dilated and at what dilation I was, and he guessed each one on point. And he was pointing it out to my midwife, and my midwife was like, yeah, you're right. And I had no idea until I looked back at the footage, but that was pretty awesome that he was like on the dot every time with each contraction, he saw like how I dilated. So that was really fun. Okay, so the baby came out and everything was good, but I wasn't able to bring her up high. And I was like, what's going on? And then I pushed out my placenta, and throughout this whole time, my midwife is so calm and so cool, and just really reassured me throughout the whole thing. Once the baby came, we noticed that the cord was very short. Not only was it very short, it was extremely tight. I think she's been in practice for over 30 years and attended over 3,000 births, and she said she has never seen it this bad. And basically she was pretty small. I think the smallest baby I had around 5 pounds and 5'11", I believe she was. I'd have to check my notes. Oh, you got my hair? You got my hair? She was pretty small compared to all my other children who were in the high 6 and 7. Joe was like 8, my eldest. So she was also 2 weeks early, and that says a lot due to the cord. And my midwife was extremely thankful, and so am I. Now looking back, I'm so beyond grateful to God that, you know, he heard my prayer in that moment, and he really answered it, because she said she doesn't know what could have happened if the baby stayed in longer. The baby was probably not receiving nutrients at all, or very, very little. The cord was extremely tight and very short. So I am grateful to God that she came exactly in the perfect time. She came a little bit earlier, but she came exactly when she needed to, and God saw that. And I went through a lot through those few days, but I'm so beyond grateful that she's okay and that she was born healthy. The postpartum is another story of its own, and I don't know if I want to share it with the home birth story. I think the postpartum and the home birth combined is the reason I was shutting out the story so much. So I I didn't want to talk about it for at least a month. Anytime anyone asked me, I was like, I just don't want to talk about it. I just don't want to talk about it. I told my closest friends about my birth just a little while ago, and it was hard for me to talk about it. I feel like I've prayed a lot and I've tried to let go and realize that everything's okay now, and that I have her and it's past, and I think that's helped me heal from it. I think a lot of stuff still brings up it's still like fresh, and it's hard to sometimes think about it, so I've been trying to still shut it out sometimes, but I know I have to deal with certain parts of it. But that is my home birth story. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being part of this journey. I will link all my other home birth stories down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Yeah? Yeah? Hi. Hi. Hello. You here? You are here?